Charles Dickens was a writer who frequently felt like his characters, like once he found the right name for them and spoke that name out loud, that character would appear to him. They'd be a real person who would bother him, who would pull on the sleeve of his elbow to be like, hey, you need to come write. Welcome back to Book Dragon Banter, a podcast where three aspiring authors talk books. We're fantasy-focused, but not exclusive. Join Sage, Katherine, and me, Zinzi Bree, as we banter about all things books. Season's greetings. This is our Christmas episode, if you can't tell. For those who are audio only, I am wearing a Santa hat and decked in red. Sage and Katherine both decided to go with green. I'm in red plaid. It's like, this is the one time a year that I willingly wear red because the rest of the time I'm in green because that actually is much more flattering on me. But Christmas is the exception. I don't care if it's not a good color on me. It's the time to wear it.
Absolutely fabulous. Sage is wearing green and has red headphones. And I'm just in boring old gray, so.
It's been a minute.
Yeah.
We've been doing retreats.
Mm-hmm. It's been a different vibe. For our holiday special, we wanted to tackle a classic. We decided to read A Christmas Carol. This is a short, itty-bitty, quick read. I had never read it. Sage, I believe, had not read it before.
I'd never read it.
Katherine
Nope.
is the only one of the three of us. Am I correct, Katherine, that had read?
Oh, yeah. I read it before, but it was like early high school, and I have like a little story to go with it, so we'll get there eventually.
I think this is the first Charles Dickens book I'd read also, so that was kind of exciting for me.
I have watched a lot of dramas that are movie remakes of Charles Dickens' work, but this is also a first actually reading his written. I think I've maybe seen like excerpts or abridged versions of his work, but not anything in its full. And this is just such a nice little package to get the tasting of Charles Dickens and his writing style.
I assume the two of you have similar experience where you've seen movie renditions or maybe the theatrical renditions, so you kind of know the story already, which does make it a little easier in my mind to dive into like a classic, especially from so long ago. It was written mid-1800s. Anyway, so the language is a little more challenging. It wasn't too bad, I didn't think, but knowing the story and where we were headed helped me a little. I actually thought it was a pretty easy read, but there were a few parts where I was like, oh, that's what they're getting at.
So yes, spoilers, although how do you spoil A Christmas Carol when there's like over 50 adaptations of it in film and play. So I don't know that it's something that can really be spoiled unless you've been living under a rock, in which case, welcome to the world. Glad you're here for Christmas.
Or modern Western culture, perhaps.
Oh, that's a good point. Yes,
Did
if
have
you were
read,
listening not from the West, then it might be less familiar to you. Although I have a hard time imagining that it hasn't. A Christmas Carol has never been out of print. Like, since its first printing run, it is the most well-known Christmas story outside of, like, the Nativity being considered a Christmas story. So I have a really hard time imagining that there wasn't some version of it translated or remade even in other cultures across the globe. Content warning. We are an explicit podcast, so we can give our honest, unfiltered opinions, whatever those may be. Seeing as this is a Christmas episode, A Christmas Carol is not raunchy. There's horror in it. Like, it's a ghost story. We'll see what we say by the, oh, no, actually, I take it back. There's a specific part that I want to talk about that might get us. And I have words, I have things, I have thoughts. There's so much. And we don't have time for all of it. A Christmas Carol is written by Charles Dickens in 1843. Something I found really interesting doing some of the research is this is actually a self-published book. Dickens self-published this. His publishers rejected it because at the time in England and Britain, Christmas was not a well-celebrated holiday. It was not like it is now. Boxing Day was a much more important day at the time. And this is also the time where, like, Christmas trees the royal family had just started bringing them over. Oh, Tannenbaum, it came from Germany over into England and had just began. So, like, A Christmas Carol, this book is part of what heavily influences the way that Christmas is celebrated now. It is heavily influenced by A Christmas Carol. I have an icebreaker question for you guys. I wanted to know because, Christmas Carol is Scrooge, old, greedy, money-grubbing man, gets visited by 3 ghosts: the ghost of Christmas past, the ghost of Christmas present, and the ghost of Christmas future. During the course of these 3 visits, it leads him to make a dramatic change in personality and have a transformation of the heart and change his greedy ways. But I wanted to ask you, ladies, of these 3 ghosts, which one haunts you? The ghost of Christmas past, the ghost of Christmas future, the ghost of Christmas present. Katherine.
For me, it is the ghost of Christmas future, because I am one of those worrywart people who's always trying to predict and figure it out, and I'm not very good at just trusting and going with the flow. So the fear of messing something up in current Christmases, current holidays, current years, whatever, and then having some kind of negative domino effect is definitely a fear of mine.
Okay. I guess I was going to say I don't feel haunted by any of them particularly, but I'm going to change my mind. It's got to be Christmas present, because every year I'm like, oh my goodness, how are we going to fit in all the things that all the different family members want to do, the expectations, the budget for having all of the events and activities and gift giving that goes along with Christmas time. And that causes me some lightweight anxiety, although I try generally not to feed into the anxiety around stuff. But that one does. I think that one gets me, because I'm like, oh my God, they're coming
How
up
do
on
I do
Christmas
it all?
time. And there's all these different events, and I want to do this one, but nobody else wants to do that one. And they all want to do this, and I don't care about that. And it starts to overwhelm. But I try to remember that it's for fun. It's a time of joyous engagement. And these are all supposed to be activities that make us happy, not feel pressured of required fun time.
This was not planned, but for me, it's personally the ghost of Christmas past that haunts me. But the reasoning is all the same. It's all about expectations. Ghost of Christmas past for me is because I grew up with a really wonderful Christmas experience. The last several years have been striving to provide that to my kids as well. The come down Christmas morning and there's a bunch of presents and it's all magical. Can I still make that magical Christmas happen? The comparison is the thief of joy. I'm comparing my past Christmases and trying to go, how do I make this one as good? Whoa, that's heavy.
Yeah.
I think it fits in with the book, because the story is very much about this like extremely wealthy miser who doesn't want to give. He won't give to charity. He talks about funding prisons and this sort of thing. He says bah humbug all the time. Anytime anyone tries to be kind to him, he's rude. He doesn't feel joy himself, but he also is not like giving to other people so that other people are in a position. And I feel like that's very resonant in our current state of the world right now, where a lot of people are struggling. A lot of people are not able to afford Christmas like they used to. Everything is more expensive. And, do we go in super debt to make Christmas magical for our children?
No, the answer is no.
The answer is no. Yeah, sorry.
Will I listen to my own advice? Time will tell.
So, the story is a classic for a reason.
Yes.
And part of it is that it is very resonant. And I imagine besides the Christmas joy and the idea of like what Christmas looks like, it's also like what it means to be a good human. How being kind to others, like that's ultimately to me what Christmas is about, is like, it's, yes, there's the childhood magic of coming and seeing all the gifts and like that is, and Santa, like that is magical for real. But over time, like the magic is like being together with people you love and being happy with them. And that is what Scrooge ended up ultimately learning, right? Is that he needed to feel that joy and also help provide it for others.
So maybe we feel it a lot right now, but it sounds like the Christmas Carol is a classic because it is always something that people somewhere, some way can resonate with. Like when Dickens wrote it, between then and now, that's why it's never left print, probably, is because it's always been relevant.
I couldn't help but read it and go, okay, as a reader, do I identify with the Bob Cratchits, where I'm hoping that all of the Ebenezer Scrooges of the world are going to, wake up and have been visited by these spirits and are going to be more generous? I'm a bit more of a cynic, where I don't feel like people are reading this and identifying as often with Scrooge and the need to be generous, to be more open-hearted. Culturally, I think we've shifted more towards a woe is me attitude. Now, to be fair, Bob Cratchit, he is very humble. He is, in particular, is very grateful for what he has, even if it is an awful job for Scrooge. But even in that, he's still humble, as opposed to his wife, who recognizes that Scrooge is a jackass and could be treating him better and is telling Bob, hey, Scrooge sucks. All right, so we are trying to change our structure a little bit, and we wanted to do from the reader's chair. We read it and the reader part of our brains. What did we enjoy? What were we surprised by? What is the fun experience of the book versus the more analytical that we will get into when we talk about it from the writer's desk? Question for you guys is, had you seen a movie or play adaptation first before having read the book? What was your first experience? And what is your favorite adaptation?
Probably my first experience of A Christmas Carol was the Disney version with like Mickey Mouse and Scrooge, who I always was a big Donald Duck fan. And so Scrooge McDuck, like perfectly cast, clearly named after this character. And so that was like my first. And then there was the Muppet version. Live action, right? So, and then I have seen theatrical performances also, including a beautiful one a couple of years ago in San Francisco, which was just like phenomenal and very different from Mickey Mouse. Same story, same general messaging, but tone was very different from like the For the Kids versions. So it was really fun to read the story and kind of remember those different things and see how it varied. The funnest thing for me is that I generally go to the Dickens Fair every Christmas season, which it's in a big warehouse and it's set up to look like old England, like as if you're outside. And there are little shops and there is a tea house, and it's all based on the mid-1800s Victorian era. Father Christmas is wandering around and Queen Victoria gets brought through on her chair, and there's pickpockets and there's the docks and there's all these plays about like historical elements. People dress up, we dress up as a family and we go. And there's dancing. And what I loved was that I had not read this, right? But when they talk about the Fezziwigs and how they were dancing at the Fezziwigs house, there is the Fezziwigs dance hall, which is one of the sections of the Dickens Fair where you can go and you can participate and do ballroom dancing. I don't actually know how to do that. So I can sit and watch as the like Fezziwigs dance around with all of their friends. And that was really a fun association to make for me. So I was really loving that.
Do they do ballroom dancing, or do they do like Virginia reel folk dancing where you can have more varieties? Because those are very different, ballroom dance versus like Victorian party dance where you can join in and...
Yeah, there's like definitely like where you line up and you go around and do like the reels. And then there is some that is more waltzy style. So a little bit
I do love a good waltz. More than that, I love a good leader on a waltz, to be fair.
Helps a lot.
Good lead is required.
Yes.
So, and
I want a vacation there.
In Victorian England? I don't.
Well, at this Dickens Fair, it sounds lovely.
At the Dickens Fair, they have flushing toilets.
I actually want to travel in time. I just want to have it modernized and go experience the
You want
vibes.
the one-day party, and then you want to go home and lay down on the floor. At least that's what I want.
I can second it.
Yep. I don't have a memory necessarily of a first adaptation, but Muppets Christmas Carol is very beloved in my house. We just watched it while we have decorated for Christmas, and I think I've seen it most years of my life since it came out, at least once a year. And it was actually really fun this time because I'd watched it so recently and then read the book, is going, oh, this line is directly taken from the book at the end when Gonzo, who's playing Dickens, says, and Tiny Tim is not dead, like in the text of the book that is capitalized, Tiny Tim is not dead at the end of the story. Like that's a direct narrative line that they both share, and I appreciated seeing more of those touches than in that adaptation, as well as seeing the things that in the book are much more horror-based and ghost story-based. The closest they get is Christmas Future being the most haunting of the spirits and the darkest that Muppet Christmas Carol really gets. So that's Muppet Christmas Carol I love it because it's so accessible and it gets to the heart of the story and the warmth of A Christmas Carol.
I have a controversial opinion. The Muppets are actually quite terrifying to me. I'm not a doll person or anything.
Puppets.
Are scary. I don't get it.
So for you, this
at
is a
all.
much more haunting. the Muppets Christmas Carol
gonna
is the
say-
haunting version.
Yeah, I would actually need to hold somebody's hand to watch the whole movie all the way through for the Muppets. That one is not going to do it for me. But it is interesting that the Christmas Carol is like a horror Christmas story that still has a good tale. And I'm put in mind of The Grinch, which is actually a movie that my family is more likely to watch at Christmas time, and how much that may have actually been inspired by Scrooge and the ghosts of Christmas past, present, and future. Because
It's the same
that one is
transformation
very
story.
lovable. Yes, exactly. That Scrooge-like Demeter to loving it almost to the extent of excess and taking care of other people and being incredibly joyful and spreading that joy around is definitely the theme in both of those. But for the version that I saw first, I saw all of the movies first. And actually, I was homeschooled in high school. One of my mother's lessons for us was to essentially watch all of the Christmas Carol versions that were out at that time and read the book and do an analysis of the differences. We definitely put our hearts into that one. I refused to do The Muppet. I still refuse to watch it. I think other family members may have seen it, and I saw the previews and was like, not a chance. No way. That's not happening. So yeah, I saw them all, and then I read the book, and then I did an analysis.
Speaking of analysis, having had movie versions in your mind first, were there things in the book version that surprised you?
The other thing that surprised me, I have a really lovely copy that was illustrated kind of somewhat recently, like definitely in this century. It had these lovely little illustrations, but was the descriptions of the ghosts. And I think that the Ghost of Christmas Future was the most like I expected, with the chains and the kind of Grim Reaper style. I'm just going to hold this picture up for those watching, but this is like a cute picture here of the Ghost of Christmas Past, and he's this weird childish, like you can't tell if he's a child or an old man. The descriptions of those ghosts really kind of weren't what I remembered. I haven't watched any of the movies recently, so I can't identify that not how they're depicted, but it wasn't how I recalled, at least.
I kind of wonder if the way that Christmas Present is depicted as someone who is jolly and large with the feast that he sits on when he gets introduced has filtered down to now why we depict Santa the way that we do, as someone who is jolly and large, as opposed to, cause, like, Saint Nicholas is, I don't think is supposed to be fat until he becomes like the Santa. But like, it's the back of my mind theory is that because up until this book, as far as I know, like ghosts were supposed to be spooky and scary, like a jolly spirit, a jolly ghost. Novel concept, maybe. So if someone else did it, let me know.
Well, there was Casper the Friendly Ghost.
Yeah, but that, I mean, way later, Sage. Yes.
Way later.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I don't think that Christmas Present is an inspiration for Casper the Friendly Ghost.
No.
I wonder if like tales of benevolent fae and things like that, though, might have been the benevolent ghost inspiration, like the hearth keepers and things like that.
Maybe.
But I do not know.
Yeah. It struck me because like childlike ghosts or spirits, I feel like those are not unheard of, but just like to have a jolly ghost that is a really unexpected twist. Because, I mean, also speaking of having a ghost story, A Christmas Carol is a ghost story. Like, Christmas is not a time for ghost stories. Halloween is for ghost stories. So even that concept of it being in the past where that's what Christmas looked like, was telling these spooky stories, was surprising to me to learn about. And A Christmas Carol is not Charles Dickens' only Christmas ghost story book. He has at least 4 other Christmas books that he wrote. Just this is the most successful one.
I did not know.
And they're all short novellas.
Did he publish The Christmas Carol by chapter, like every
No.
week was released? Maybe it was Great Expectations or a different one.
So
Actually, I take it back. I don't know that. I just think that.
Yeah. Charles Dickens is his books and his style of releasing chapter by chapter. He's the one that made that serialization popular, but he was not paid by word. He was paid by like chapter section. So him just being verbose is his choice. That's not him trying to pad words to get more money out of it. But a Christmas Carol was self-published and written in a matter of 6 weeks. He was originally going to write a political pamphlet and then decided it would actually be better to tell what he wanted to say in the form of a story. And then he took it to the publishers and they went, nope, Christmas is not important enough. You've had a couple of flops. Oliver Twist was great, but we haven't had another Oliver Twist, so no thanks. So he went and he was like, I really believe in this. I'm going to take the risk, and self-published it. The books sold out. All of the first printing sold out before Christmas. But of the money that he put out for that first printing, it was like £2,000, and his return was like around £170 is what he made back in profit from that first run. Something like that. And he was terribly in debt at the time and was panicking trying to write this book so that he could keep his extravagant lifestyle. Is there anything else we want to talk about from the reader's chair? Go ahead.
Yeah.
So Katherine had mentioned that she read a couple of different versions. That inspired me also to look for adaptations because, like I said, I had seen a bunch of television, movie, and theatrical versions, but they're all fairly consistent with the story. And the one that I came across, I didn't get a chance to read the whole thing, is like a romantasy called A Hunt So Wild and Cruel.
Oh.
Did you read that one, Katherine?
No.
Okay.
Titled A Christmas Carol.
Okay. I was looking on and I was like searching for a Christmas Carol adaptation. I was looking for a Christmas Carol adaptation. So this one is definitely like it's a retelling. It's based on the same concept. The premise is that there's this queen, a queen who's very greedy, and she's young, but she's just new to being a queen, and she's greedy and she's selfish, and she cancels the winter festivities because she had this sad upbringing and she doesn't have a lot of happy associations with the season. And then the wild hunt, which is a folktale element that I love and have always been drawn to. So the wild hunt comes down to like teach her the error of her ways, and there's these 3 like strapping, sexy members of the wild hunt that come and haunt her and convince her. Based on the description and the way it was going, it seems like it's going to have the same moral to the story, just in a very like kind of hot, sexy fae way that romantasy loves these days is very popular. So anyone who reads the original and is looking for like a modern romantasy retelling, that might be a fun take. But I was thinking maybe Katherine had read that one because you said you had a few that you had read.
Yes, but I was reading like versions and adaptations of A Christmas Carol. So they were all the original story.
A book that I just started that I'm 4 chapters into, B.K. Borison's Good Spirits, which is a fantasy rom-com like romantasy that is based on A Christmas Carol in some ways, but it's a retelling because the romantic interest is the ghost of Christmas past. And he is
slightly like the one I was talking about where it was the wild hunt.
Yeah,
but
maybe.
Also romancy.
Well, it's a contemporary novel.
Got it.
It feels more in vein with like the Spirited movie musical so far. But I'm really enjoying the audiobook version in particular. They have really good narrators. I like the warmth of the female narrator's voice, and then the male narrator, the character is Irish, so the narrator is doing an Irish accent. I don't know if he actually is Irish, but I'm having a really good time because every time he's talking, it starts making me think that I need to be doing the accent, and I just go into that upper register where like there's so much more air that comes out of your mouth when you're trying to do the accent. So I'm just like, I'll be listening and he'll say stuff and then I'll be like sitting there mouthing it and I must look like a crazy person, but I'm having a great time.
I do that too. When I'm listening to like English authors and I'll just start repeating it. I'll be like, okay, yes, I can talk like them. Or they'll do some Cockney and I'll be like, hey, I can do that. Hey.
I don't do accents. Sorry. Nothing here.
But I wanted to say that something else I was surprised about, especially because you guys were talking about the naming conventions of Charles Dickens, is actually that Bob Cratchit, I, for some reason, had forgotten that his first name was Bob. So when I was re-listening to it, it just kept standing out to me. Like, I was doing the dishes and I was like, Bob. Who in a Charles Dickens universe is called Bob? Like, what? There's nothing wrong with the name, but it stood out in contrast to the other choices made for the book. And I thought that that was an interesting choice. Especially since Cratchit fit the universe that I believe Dickens was writing. So yeah, I was surprised as a reader by the name Bob.
The name that is stumping me is Scrooge's nephew. Is his nephew named in the book?
I don't think so.
Going along continuing in the reader's chair, something that made me uncomfortable as a reader, but I think that was Charles Dickens' intention, is at the end of the interaction with the Ghost of Christmas Present, there are the two children hanging onto his feet under the robe. One of them, it's a girl and a boy, and one of them is Ignorance is the name, and the other one is Want. And when applying that to your Christmas present, how those are a literal drag on your feet is Want and Ignorance. I understand why that's not in the Muppets version, but like I was both horrified and intrigued to see it in the story. And just that is something I think is going to stick with me going forward, thinking about the Christmas season. Several of the other moral points of A Christmas Carol, they've been so done. I've heard them so much. I don't take them in. And this is something that I felt was fresh and that will stick with me because I'm also in a place to receive this part of the message of this book. But it was uncomfortable.
It was short and very powerful. I remember kind of reading it and then having to reread that section, and it was only like a paragraph or something like that. Yeah. And really, like, uncomfortable, very powerful. And for such a small bit of writing, like, sticks with you. And I agree, because the whole book is, Scrooge learning how to change, and it happens in stages. He starts to recognize the error of his ways and see that he wants to change things throughout the course. It doesn't just happen at the end. But this was like, whoa. And then kind of not talked about again, but still there.
Yep. Yeah. I did appreciate seeing that it happens in little bits and even getting those thoughts of like Scrooge sees his interactions with Fezziwig as his boss when he was a young man. And then he makes a line about, oh, I wish I could have a word or two with my clerk. And he had there's those repeated oh, I've seen this. Oh, that makes me change my opinion a little bit here, a little bit here, a little bit here, until by the time we get down to Christmas Future, it's a much more drastic, oh no, please, I'll keep Christmas in my heart. And all the year long, his final speech that he gets before waking up and celebrating, my bedpost, it's my bed. It's Christmas Day. Hero, throw the curtains open. Is the turkey still in the window? I will not do the whole thing. I'll stop there. I like seeing that layered throughout, that even though it is still a change in a short period of time, you still as the reader are understanding that it's happening for Scrooge in increments until he, has his transformation. What, to you guys, makes A Christmas Carol timeless as a reader?
Oh, it's things like the the children hanging on to the ghost that I think make it timeless. I'd say that that's as applicable today as it was in the day that Dickens wrote it, that this want, that this desire and one's ignorance, sometimes willful ignorance, is distracting and leads to this very self-focused way of handling one's holidays, if not every day. And it can spill over negatively onto others, for sure.
So like personal, how can I be a better person daily, not just on Christmas? How can I be more charitable in my heart? How can I be more loving and yes to an invitation, go spend time away from work with family or friends and like, you know, there's, so that's a piece that like each one of us can take in, but then there's the bigger like thing about how it is, the story is very powerful. I think probably since it was written, people feel like, yeah, rich people pay out, help the world be a better place by sharing your wealth. I think that just like hooks people.
Yeah. When it was published, the charitable giving post the Christmas Carol coming out, it like exploded.
Awesome.
Something that I think that part of why A Christmas Carol is timeless is because even though Charles Dickens was a professed Christian, A Christmas Carol itself is not a Christian book. There is, you know, there's God Bless Us Everyone. There's a mention of Tiny Tim and Bob Cratchit going to church, but there's Jesus is not part of the book, right? Like the Christian faith outside of those mentions, ghosts and spirits are certainly not in this. If it was a Christian book, like they would be angels. They would be visiting angels. They wouldn't be haunts, right? So it is not religious in that way. And I think that's part of what has allowed it to be timeless, because it didn't get pigeonholed into like, oh no, but that's a Christian book. Letting the morals be there without it being preached as a specific religious tenet, I think is part of what allows it to be timeless and adaptable.
Definitely. And I think like because I would agree with you, there is a few mentions of God in there, but it doesn't have like a strong moralizing around God says this or Jesus says this, right? Like it's the moral is more about like being a good person. I think as Christmas is celebrated by people who don't have like, I am agnostic and I celebrate Christmas because that's how I was raised. So we never went to church or anything like that, but we still have the commercial version of Christmas where there's presents and there's Santa, and there is still the concept of like goodwill towards people and spending time with family and having like this warmth through a cold, dark time of the year. That kind of stuff comes through, but it's not anything to do with Jesus being born, right? It's this other side of Christmas, of the American commercial side of Christmas. And this book works great with that because it kind of has
a lot of the things you just listed are directly from A Christmas Carol, that it's descended from this book becoming so prevalent and changing the way that Christmas was celebrated.
It is really interesting to me that this book being like, when we were talking about what book to choose for the podcast, like I couldn't think of very many novels that were Christmas themed outside of romance novels that have like Christmas theme, but I couldn't think of anything that was like a classic or like this is the book outside of this one. And it's interesting that it is Christmas, but it is not terribly religious. It's fascinating.
It is definitely a moral story as opposed to a religious story in this case. You know, that said, though, I love the magic of Christmas, and I would love to believe that there is an embodiment of this St. Nicholas spirit, or even the ghosts of Christmas past, present, and future that visit people. It forces me to think through the past, present, and future of Christmas.
To the writer's desk. I didn't have a chance to read the book of The Man Who Invented Christmas, but I did get to watch a movie that was an adaptation. It does have some fictionalization to sort of the autobiography elements of Charles Dickens writing A Christmas Carol. But it was really fun to see. Charles Dickens was a writer who frequently felt like his characters, like once he found the right name for them and spoke that name out loud, like that character would appear to him. Like they'd be a real person who would bother him, who would like pull on the sleeve of his elbow to be like, hey, you need to come write.
Love that.
And so something really fun that they did with this movie is they had these actors, the actor who played Scrooge, like he was basically a ghost who was haunting Dickens as he was trying to write A Christmas Carol. Yeah, and you got to see kind of like how Charles Dickens drew inspiration from different interactions around him that he had. He had a little book that he carried around with him, and he would write down any interesting name that he came across. So he'd have a book of names, and that's what he would use to then name his characters later. So it was just a very fun way of getting some insight into the creation process of this book. So I recommend giving it a watch. There's also a rumor, and this was something that was interesting, but there's also a rumor or a belief that Charles Dickens was bipolar. Part of the genius of him and his ability to create so many works of value to literature were created during manic times of being able to scribble and get a ton done, but then he would have low lows and go on lots of midnight walks through the city, which is part of why they think that's part of the diagnosis for bipolar, apparently. He is a prolific letter writer.
You didn't have texting.
To understand his life and his process and things like that.
I have something from the writer's desk. Can I share that?
Yeah.
So I was surprised at the beginning of the story, thinking from like a writer perspective and what kind of current modern sensibility around storytelling is. And like, are there prologues or whatever? And at the very beginning, like it's literally the second paragraph of the story. He talks about how old Marley was as dead as a doornail. Old Marley was as dead as a doornail. And then he goes into this whole thing about how not really knowing.
Why isn't it a coffin nail? Why is it
why
dead as a
isn't it
doornail?
coffin nail?
I was like, this is such clear narrator voice that I was like, okay, I'm here. I'm being like, I am sitting in the room and Dickens is telling me this story. It's not Scrooge telling me the story. It's Dickens. And I love the narrator's voice. And I love when the narrator has so much personality. I feel like that's so much rarer and harder to find. I miss it. I love that. I love a narrator who's like up in all of the characters' business.
Yeah, and like it's his voice and it's unique and interesting. And I feel like everything is, not to say everything, because there's plenty of unique books out there and plenty of different author styles, but I definitely feel like there's this expectation of what it, if you want to be published, you have to fall into this category. I mean, he did self-publish, so I don't know. But I don't think it had to do with that. It had to do with the Christmas not being a popular time of year. Yeah, I love that. Immediately was like, oh, this is going to be a unique story. I'm excited to read it from paragraph 2.
Yeah. And I mean, despite the fact that it was a ghost story, it still set the scene for me to feel like Dickens sat me down by a fire and we were having this talk. And then he starts in on his story and he has a very personal side note about doornails that I could totally relate to. And I was suddenly like, oh, that's funny. And it set me up as a reader to be ready for him to like open the book and start telling the story. And he closed it in a very similar manner. I have like funny comments from the narrator. It's almost like you could feel the cinematic pulling away from the story. And I think that is incredibly unique to him. But also looking back at books about 100 years ago, the narrator voice was more common as we see it now. And maybe it was not always done consistently well, but I see it a lot more, and I see a lot of character in that from the authors behind these stories.
There was almost more character in the narrator and in Scrooge than there were in some of the like side characters.
Oh, absolutely.
Right? Bob Cratchit didn't feel as, I mean, he was in the story enough, but he didn't feel like as main of a character as in some of the cartoon retellings and movie retellings.
You care more about Bob Cratchit and Tiny Tim in The Muppets Carol because you're carrying, just like with fan fiction, is you're carrying all of your care and love for the Muppets, if they were part of your childhood, into that version of the story, as opposed to just meeting the characters freshly without that extra weight to them.
And without the author like really making you care about them. You have to spend time on the page to do that, right?
For such a short book, something I really admire is like Scrooge is really depicted as awful. He's mean to his nephew. This was the note that I wanted to come back to. After seeing the movie adaptation, which is A Christmas Carol adaptation, Spirited, with Ryan Reynolds and Will Ferrell. And there's an entire song called Good Afternoon, how good afternoon is basically saying fuck off to people. And he says it to his nephew like 3 times in the book. Good afternoon. So every time I was like, so he's telling his nephew to fuck off like multiple times there. And
I feel like I should adapt this.
Yep.
It's a very polite way you can say it in any company.
I was just like, thank you to that movie for forever changing my perspective on good afternoon. And then seeing it here specifically in A Christmas Carol. That was extra fun.
Did this really bring up theme to you? Like from the writer's desk, the writer's perspective, were either of you considering throughout the strength of theme in one story? 'Cause I was definitely in mind of that. Or
I struggle to write theme. That's one of the things that for me, I don't write to theme. It's I write story and then I see what my character's decisions were that organically lend itself to a theme. And then I have to go back in a later draft to like bring those thematic tones out more and layer it throughout the course of the story instead of just like, okay, this is what we ended up with at the end. But to be able to do that in, this is what, 90 pages, maybe that's something that I need to try doing in such a, to do a novelette, to do a shorter, tight thematic work may just be a really good exercise in building that muscle. Because I think a lot of the books that really matter and become timeless and become classics are books that are built around a theme, that have something to say, that aren't just, this is here for fun and you're eating it up like potato chips, right? Like there's plenty of those books and they are fun, but they're not going to be on your list of this is my favorite of all time. They're not going to be I go back to read this every year during the holidays.
I hear you. But that's very interesting, the way that you describe your writing process, because for me, I feel very similarly. And I think a lot of other authors, especially those on the discovery side of things, feel the same way. But theme helps us to clarify in our revisions what exactly we're communicating to our audience. Or if Dickens didn't start out with his theme as his premise, he had a very distinct message he wanted to communicate about Scrooge and about self-transformation, and especially how the holidays were a great opportunity to lean into the person you actually want to be, as opposed to the person that steals joy from all of these other people. And I wonder if Dickens didn't start out with the theme as his premise, as opposed to like those of us who are more discovery, we have an idea that's just a fun idea, and then we figure it out later from there.
I am like a combination of a discovery writer and an outliner. So I will have ideas come to me that are like characters or scenes that like come from the universe into my mind, and that starts me off telling myself a story in my head. And I actually do that a lot more before I actually sit down and start writing the words down on the page. And then I will start writing and I will start outlining almost simultaneously. So I will be writing and then I will take a break and I'll outline and I'll do more writing. And then ultimately I have a super, super messy draft and I go back and do a reverse outline and a clean draft to then revise to actually get to the point where I could publish it. But definitely theme starts to come in at some point for me where I start to notice, like as the story is evolving, I start to notice these elements that I didn't necessarily come up with, but I will start to consider more. And I think for Dickens, like I can see this being almost like answering a thematic question. So what can turn a miserly man into somebody generous could be your thematic question. What does it
You
take
scare him.
for a miserly man? Yeah, exactly. You show him how nobody gives a shit that he's dead. When he dies.
They're going to take everything he's spent all these years obsessed with collecting, and they'll just take it as if it's nothing, as if it's their due for putting up with him.
Yeah, seriously. And it's all gone and there's nothing to remember him by, right? There's no fond memories and there's no material possessions.
Yeah.
So, yeah, but I can see him, especially from what Zinzi said about his backstory, I can see of Dickens himself, I can see him having this idea in his head of the story he wanted to tell and then kind of crafting the characters around that. Or maybe Scrooge came to him as a character that had that story. And then he built it. I would think that he had the theme in mind early on, especially since it sounded like he wrote it pretty quickly. He had a story he wanted to tell with a moral message that he was trying to communicate. Which when I'm writing is generally, I'm not trying to get across a moral message. I'm trying to create a story with characters that is meaningful, where there is growth and whatnot. My general themes tend to be a little broader, of like finding balance and stuff like this.
I think it's interesting how every single writer's process is different. And I really wish I could talk to Charles Dickens about how this story developed for him, because maybe he discovered it. Maybe he had a weird trip and he wrote the premise of the story. And then he was like, oh, now I see it. Now I have a theme. And then he revised it accordingly. Maybe he was like, I really need to write this theme. How am I going to do it? Especially because of whatever political or social things were going on at the time. And then the Scrooge came to him, and then the ghosts came to him. Like, how do I force Scrooge into this change? Oh, well, maybe it's ghosts. I really wish I knew what came first for him, the chicken or the egg.
I added a little additional section about making Christmas cozy because it was really depressing to me after I learned the extra background information about Charles Dickens, and it colored A Christmas Carol. I wanted this episode to be more fun and lighthearted. I was hoping it wouldn't get super political or we went political, we went religious differences. And Christmas is normally the time of like, put that all aside so everyone can be together, right? Like that's, but I personally am like, no, you can bring that to the table and have a healthy, respectful conversation, even if you disagree on things. That's what I would prefer. But anyway, I, for myself, was like, I am in this negative mindset. I really need to get out of it. I'm going to go research Jolabokaflod, which is the Christmas book flood, Icelandic tradition, where it is a book exchange celebrated on December 24th. Everyone exchanges a book. You get your book, you get hot chocolate, and then you go read that book. That's your day. That's the whole thing.
Let's do it. Yes, please.
And you go read. So now, personally, in my household, doing that on December 24th is not going to be an option whatsoever, because family partying and all that. But I do still think that the idea of Jolabokaflod, this like self-care, I'm going to have a book, I'm going to have my hot chocolate, I'm going to have a cozy minute and just enjoy my book and fully take a step back from all of the other busyness of the season. Like, I feel like this is an opportunity to do that. But I think especially as a mom who has to make the magic happen is really important to also take that time to make magic happen for myself. That's, self-care moment. So personally, what I'm hoping to do the day after Christmas, when everything has sort of calmed down and the craziness is done, so December 26th can be Jolabokaflod, and you get your book, you get your hot chocolates, you have your day of rest to read and go just take care of yourself and rejuvenate post-Christmas if that's what you need.
I like it.
But
I like that.
Let's do Jolabokaflod instead of Boxing Day.
I don't actually know, like, what is Boxing Day? I don't know anything about that holiday or why it's celebrated.
I thought it was when you boxed up stuff and gave it to charity.
Oh.
So like whatever, I'm going to put it in the boxes and donate it.
This is my ignorant American
goods.
showing, but I literally thought Boxing Day had something to do with the sport. Like that.
Yeah.
I thought it was
like a
box
sport
up all
holiday.
the stuff that you didn't like that you got for Christmas and send it back to the return desk.
Tell us what it actually is.
I may have to cut this because I don't want us to look super ignorant, guys.
Ignorance and want are clutching at my legs right now.
Yeah, for sure.
I did want to say that Boxing Day is the day of giving Christmas boxes of gifts, money, or leftover food to the servants or tradespeople who worked on Christmas Day, so who didn't get that day off as a holiday. Then that's the day that people.
So then is Boxing Day where we got the Christmas present exchange part of Christmas, and then the meaning of goodwill part was the Christmas Carol trickle down?
Possibly. And then it was also that it used to be on December 26th, St. Stephen's Day or St. Stephen's Day was when you would open the church alms boxes and distribute that to the poor. And so that's like a similar thing with like being given to the poor. So, but now we know.
So, follow-up question that I feel like I have to ask. Having read Christmas Carol, having a big theme of it being generosity, did it make you think about, oh, this is something, an area yourself that like, okay, I can, for example, my kid's school is currently doing a food pantry drive, and I don't have a bunch of canned food sitting around that I can give, but I do have new toiletries that are just sitting in my closet that I can donate, you know, like toothbrushes that the dentist keeps giving me that are still in their packaging, but I'm never going to use because I have an electric toothbrush. Those are things that I can donate, and that's like part of that generosity. Did reading this trigger any thoughts of a generous action that you can do for the Christmas
I've always
season?
really liked giving to the toy drive
Mm-hmm.
in my city, and that way my kids are very fortunate and get toys at Christmas, and this way I can make sure that other kids that are less fortunate can also have toys. I used to make, when my kids were younger, this is kind of a mean mommy thing, I used to make them go with me and pick the toys out and then not get to keep them, wrap them and give them away.
That's
And
so
I felt
rough.
like it was rough, but it was also like, look, you're going to get all
Yeah.
these toys on Christmas, and this is an opportunity for you to pick something you know another kid would like and
Mhm.
give
I
it.
did.
Yeah, so that's the one I like to do. I will do canned goods and stuff like that too.
Mhm.
But the boxes I see around town are definitely more like the toy drive boxes. I wouldn't say that reading the book made me think about that more. Zinzi, what you made a point earlier, how my mind was immediately like, all those super rich people need to do
Mhm.
more, as opposed to like, oh, I personally can also do more. But I don't know that it always just is like about Christmas. It's like I try and do some throughout the year, and this is a nice time to do more.
Mhm. Well, and especially because you can do more, but there's also organizations ready to receive more
Yeah.
and equipped to make a bigger impact than at other times of the year. Maybe more needed this year than it has been.
100%. I would love to do the cozy up for holiday reading.
Yes, we can do this real quick. So
Got
I'm
it.
just going to go with cozy reading. My personal vision for Jolabokaflod to cozy up for reading will be sitting in this chair with a hot chocolate next to me, my coziest fuzzy socks, a heated blanket, and a book that I will be reading both as an ebook and also listening to the audiobook. So my coziest version of getting to enjoy the book is an immersion read. That will be my cozy reading goal for Christmas.
Love it. I always
do
like to
too.
give a gift of a book to everybody that I gift to. My version of a cozy Christmas is going to be to give the members of my immediate family books so that we can all sit together on the couch with blankets and hot chocolate or chai and read at the same time in silence.
So
Which
that's already doing a Jolabokaflod. You already have it downstage.
I love it.
I love that too. On the 26th, I would really like to curl up in a big chair or on my bed and read. Just permission to not do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's only one day a year. That's a quote, by the way, from A Christmas Carol.
Yeah. Only one day a year that you get a paid holiday.
Holiday.
This has been Book Dragon Banter. Thank you so much for joining us. Please give us a review. That's really essential and really helps us know that we're doing a good job and makes us more visible to potential new listeners. I wanted to put a plug in here. I came across a YouTube video from Topher's Library that had a list of holiday reads you'll love, no matter what kind of reading mood you're in. And it was a really great list, and I'm going to have the link in the description because I really liked the books that he recommended. Outside of our podcast, we have Book Dragon Inc. writing retreats, and I personally host Write With Me Zinzi Bree, which is a live Zoom co-working writing group. More information about that and our social media is all down in the show notes. Thank you so much for joining us.
And happy holidays.
Happy holidays, Merry Christmas, and we will see you in the new year.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. We didn't even do book recommendations, and I have not read this yet, but I'm so excited to read J.R.R. Tolkien's Letters from Father Christmas, because he wrote
interesting.
all of these and illustrated them for his kids, and it's all about Santa, Father Christmas, and one of his assistants is a polar bear who keeps like messing things up and Santa has to go fix it, apparently. So that's the kids' adapted Christmas Carol, and then J.R.R. Tolkien's Letters from Santa are my planned read to my kids this December. My
That
read
sounds
alouds.
wonderful.
I have one that is also a children's book. So I have a Christmas themed book that I read to my kids a couple of years ago. I thought it was a lovely read even as an adult, but it is definitely like a middle grade children's novel writing style and everything. It's by Lev Grossman, who wrote The Magicians, which is a trilogy that I really love. It's called The Silver Arrow, and it's about a child who is gifted a magical train by her kind of uncle. It gives me a little bit of the Nutcracker vibes, which that's my big Christmas association, is the Nutcracker story.
I'm kind of hoping we do Nutcracker as our theme for next year's Christmas.
Let's decide it now. I'm here for it.
So in The Silver Arrow, the kids go on a magical train ride, and it is so beautiful, fantastic. They have animal friends that they come across, and it's contemporary in the sense that it takes place in modern times, but the story is so magical, and I really I still think about it as an adult. Just like maybe I'm going to reread that this Christmas.
My Christmas book that I've already decided that I want to read is actually this retelling of Rumpelstiltskin, which apparently is really popular already in a lot of circles. But it's Silver something. It's
Spinning Silver by Naomi Novik.
Yes. Yes,
oh, yeah,
exactly that.
Too.
And that is what I want to read over the holiday year.
I love her. I can't wait to hear how you like it.
I'm going to send you guys the links to Topher's library, his holiday reads list, because it has some middle grade books. It has some horror books. It has, so the author who wrote Slewfoot that you liked, right, Katherine? He has a Krampus book.
Ooh,
that he
not even
that
horror, but
author
that sounds
did.
amazing.
So that's on the list, but also The Green Glass House, which is a middle school read where it's like an enchanted hotel gets full up of guests that aren't supposed to be there and a kid has to go. But there's also here's Christmas murder mysteries, and it's a whole fun list.
This whole list.
Yeah, I was all of these sound fantastic. They're not typical, because most of the books that I'm seeing, particularly on Book Talk and getting advertised, are much more the Christmas rom-com, basically a Hallmark movie as a book.
Yeah.
And that's great, but those are one-time reads, or they're potato chip reads, and I'm looking for something more substantial during Christmas.
I love the idea.
Reads.
You got to mix some potato chips with some protein, and some vegetables.